Syms on the mic, talking life and what's alike. Middle age, it's quite the ride, finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind, funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way.
Hey everybody. Hi Tim.
Hello Trav.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm so much better now that your face is in front of me.
Wow, thank you Trav. That's very kind.
Welcome everybody to the Tim and Trav podcast. As a reminder for those who have been here before and an intro to our first time listeners, which I hope we have a few more of. The Tim and Trav podcast is basically about life in our 40s and transitions and everything in between. So welcome.
Yeah, it's great to have everybody here. We continue to get just floored by our amazing guests who are coming on, and we have a great guest today. So just so grateful for these people and the work that they're doing. Paul's, I'm still thinking about what Paul shared with us in terms of his work and commitment.
Yeah, for sure. If you haven't listened already, episode 107, Paul Robinson, just an incredible dude and a great interview as well. Tim, I'm going to come to you with a shock a bit. Are you ready?
I can't wait.
I have a hair care tip.
Wow.
Are you shocked?
Bring it.
Shocked.
Yeah. Maybe I should sit down. Carry on.
So if you don't already know, folks, I'm bald, like super bald. So hair care is not exactly at the top of my list. And as we've talked about before, Tim tends to bring in his like Costco rendition, but I decided as a little bit of a combination between a listener comment and a hair care tip, I reached out, as I promised I would on a previous episode, to a guy who has a great head of hair, my friend Andy. And every time I look at him, I'm like, man, that guy's he's got like a flow. Like I'm not very envious of people with hair, but like, that's a good look. So I reached out to him and he's like, my only advice is to find a good stylist. So there you go. Andy,
wow.
Coming through.
Thank you, Andy. I have a good stylist. I don't know if you noticed, but I did get a haircut since our last time together. We're setting records. It is now down to about maybe 2 minutes that it takes to buzz this head and move on. And thank you to Christy for your continued support and for not making fun of me. Yeah. No. So Trav, tell me, thank you for that update. I appreciate that. Very helpful. Mm-hmm. Everybody should get a stylist.
Yeah.
Do you have a awesome wife moment to share?
I do have an awesome wife moment to share.
Cool.
As we've talked about on this podcast before, I am still in search of a job. And it is largely due to a lot of different factors. And, actually our guest today even alluded to it, that finding a job is a full-time job. And it's not exactly easy, and it's mentally taxing and all these things. And I've mentioned Kristen as a massive support system. But one thing I noticed throughout all this is that she lets me vent. And that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do when you're watching somebody that you care about go through things, and you're, like, this is not a pity party. Look, everybody has to go through this at some point. It's not that big a deal. I'll get through it. It's, whatever. But I know in myself that if I don't have that release and a safe space to talk about things, then it gets real dicey real fast mentally for me. So the fact that she is my constant patient sounding board. And then also, I think it's really important for people to have somebody like a Kristen in their lives who can kind of point out and interpret the outside world that you may not necessarily see for yourself. And I hope that others have that in their lives as well. But I'm very, very fortunate to have that in Kristen, in the sense that she can constantly and very gently, sometimes if my male ego comes into play, she's like, hey, have you maybe looked at it this way? And not necessarily like, hey, dummy, even though she'd probably be warranted in that sometimes too. So yeah, that's my awesome wife moment. And again, it's a bit general, but I'm going through it, and it happened literally within the last 36 hours. So there we go. Thank you to Kristen as always.
Thank you to Kristen.
Tim?
And I appreciate you sharing that, Trav. I was holding back on this, but I was going to tell you that every time that you go and vent to Kristen, she's then calling me and venting to me. So
it's a ripple effect. There's a sounding
really
board
is.
pattern here.
So I'm bearing the brunt of this, man, and I hope it ends soon. I'm joking, of course. I'm joking, of course. But you make some great points, Trav. I mean, and I really honor and I want to acknowledge your own recognition of the importance of, going through something like that and finding ways to take care of yourself through the process. It's not an easy space to be. So
thanks, man.
I think that's great, man. Thank you. Yeah.
What about your awesome wife?
Mine's pretty funny. We had my daughter had a birthday party recently at the house. And so there were about maybe 8 or 9 8-year-old girls here for it's sort of like it's not a slumber party, but it's an evening party. So the kids come in their pajamas and do fun activities, watch a movie. And it was amazing. Christy put on a masterclass. Honestly, so there's these 8 or 9 young girls who are all hysterical, right? They're all sweet kids. And I found myself struggling immensely to figure out how to interact with these kids, right? Like I did not know what to do. And she was just directing all of the activities and doing all stuff. I mean, at one point I walked into the room while they're all building some puppets at the dining room table. And all of a sudden I found myself just saying some sort of dumb joke about a kangaroo or something in the backyard. And, they all get like, oh my gosh. And then I just walked away because I was like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to
I made my joke. I'm out.
Exactly. I felt like I did not contribute in any way, to this engagement, this party. And she just rocked it. I was like sitting in the other room, just floored by her ability to keep them sort of like aligned, on a certain project and keep the energy intact. I was amazed, and I just had to give her all the credit for that. It was so awesome. I was the guy who came in after all the tacos were served and picked up all the rice and beans off of the floor. I did that well, which I'm proud of myself for that. Nice. But it was good at cleanup and food service. But holy cow, it was amazing. It was amazing to watch her, and it didn't surprise me at all.
How many kids?
There were 8 or 9. 8 or 9, wow. Yeah. They were with us for 3 or 4 hours, and nice. I was probably hiding in like the back closet for 75% of that time. I have never felt
that's awesome.
It was amazing. It was amazing to watch her do that, and she's just a superstar. So.
Well, it never shocks me when you sing the accolades of Christy, but that's pretty. You put me there visually, and I immediately started to break out in a sweat. So
yeah, I was trying to figure out. I was like, why am I struggling so much in terms of like how to engage with these kids? All I feel like I can do is tell dumb jokes and then walk away. Like I'm not helping at all. So
hey, you know what though? Props to you for acknowledging the fact that you were useless.
Yeah, thank you. I have no problem with that, man. I'm very good at cleaning, and I will continue to tout that. Hey, did we get any listener comments since our last episode?
We did. We actually got a very nice one, and this one comes from Robbie.
Oh, wow.
If anybody is in need of a great photographer, we have used the services of Open Field Photography. It's all one word, Open Field. Robbie and Lauren, and Robbie wrote in and said, I just wanted to reach out and congratulate you on the podcast. I've listened to a few episodes and really enjoy what you're up to. He went on to have some niceties about the family and so forth. I consider him a friend, so it was a very nice message. But it was totally unprompted. And Robbie, thank you very much for writing in. That was really nice of you. A little encouragement goes a long way, which I've been trying
That's
to convince
huge, man. Yeah. I'll do what I can. That's very kind of Robbie. I really appreciate hearing that. It's great to, it's great to get feedback. And I just want to take this opportunity to encourage other people to share this podcast with people. I think that's something that I recognize daily that I'm very bad at doing. I know that there's a lot of platforms out there where I could be, getting this out, but I tend to just stay off of them largely outside of LinkedIn. But I have shared with you, Trav, my ultimate goal for this podcast, which I think if I understand things correctly, we need a heck of a lot more subscribers to secure that Dyson sponsorship. But
this is all about just getting Tim recognized in the vacuum community.
Honestly, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Do you get excited before recycling day?
In what way?
Like, I have a tendency maybe a couple days before to kind of start emptying out boxes that, if a cereal box maybe has just a little bit left in it, I'll remove the bag and put it into the cupboard and take the cardboard and, consolidate it into a larger box.
So I will level with you on one way. It's not recycling specific, although that is part of
Okay.
it. My
Yeah.
my biggest my like kind of my Dyson moment, if you will,
Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
when right before trash day comes on Tuesday. So when we like Monday evening, one of my favorite things to do is to go through the cupboards and the refrigerator and basically just like make sense of life by just
Yeah.
culling, right? It's like, and it also, frankly, it helps me to understand because I do a lot of the shopping and so forth for groceries. It's like, not only is it like organization, which is a thing I love, but it's also understanding what we actually need. So it's like inventory. So it's like, okay, all right, and maybe we're frankly being a bit ugly in the way we overbuy. So it's like, okay, like, let's cool it on this because the kids aren't eating this anymore, or like that kind of thing. So it's kind of like that Monday evening, Monday afternoon organization of my life. It comes with the recycles, with the trash, with the cleaning out and wiping down of the counters and stuff like that. So yeah, I hear you. I get you.
No, it's aligned. I mean, it's all aligned. Like, I love, I love the days leading up to recycling day. I love when I hear that truck rolling through the neighborhood. It only comes every 2 weeks here, so it's
Oh,
like, and I
wow.
got, yeah, for recycling, garbage. We have a lot of garbage pickup, but I find that I tend to continuously get myself in trouble, and I did this the other day. We had like a Costco box of popcorn, microwave popcorn, and then we have a like little basket in one of our rooms that has snacks in it, and there was way too much popcorn to dump into that. There's no reason to dump all that popcorn into the basket other than the fact that it allowed me to get the box off the shelf. And I did it, covering all the other snacks that were in there, knowing full well that it was not the right thing to do. It was not a good move, but I couldn't stop myself.
The recycling truck is coming and we're getting rid of this box.
I was so excited.
I think we should ask people to write in as listener comments how they like what's their little organization thing that just like scratches that perfect itch. So if you have one of those,
Yeah.
what's your Dyson moment? What's your recycling truck is coming or cleaning out the refrigerator moment? Tim and Trav podcast at gmail.com, or you can put it in any of the comment sections where you're listening.
And
But yeah, I agree.
hit subscribe. Hit subscribe. We gotta get that Dyson sponsorship. So help us get to 1,000. It's gonna.
That's right.
It may take 15 years, but we're gonna get there.
Episode. Oh God. Yeah. Ugh. You're gonna have to put up with me for a full lifetime. Here it comes.
We may be even more bald
Here
by
it
that point
comes.
than we are now.
I don't. And you have a ways to go. I do not. Mine's
Fair,
gone. Mine's fully
fair,
gone.
fair, fair.
So Tim, something awesome you've read, seen, experienced?
Yeah, yeah. Mine's real simple. And I've just been sort of, yeah, I've been kind of touched by certain moments recently. But I was taking my daughter to school the other day, and she ran up to a friend. She saw a friend from a distance. She's in third grade, and she's been doing this for years. I don't think that this is just her. I think this is kids in general. And they ran up and just hugged each other. And it made me really stop for a minute. I mean, it was just awesome, right? Like, they just really like each other. They're good friends, and they wanted to start the day that way. And obviously, we grow out of that, right? As we age, we don't have that innocence that a child carries and exhibits. But I was just really touched by, just the innocence of the whole of them together and enjoying one another together. And it really made me reflect on how I am engaging with other people. We talk about this a
Mm.
lot, and the opportunities that we have. I'm not going to start hugging people. That's not. It's not what I'm saying with this.
Unwanted touching. Yeah.
But I think that we have a lot of opportunity to really brighten people's days. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we should continue to take advantage of that. So I saw my daughter
I
do
love
that. I
that.
saw her friend do that, and I loved it.
I think we can learn a lot from our kids.
Yeah, you're right about that. You're right about that. How about you?
For
What do
sure.
you got?
So, mine's a little bit darker, but if you follow me on the path, I promise this is a good thing. So, a very long time ago, I think in 1989, a young girl was kidnapped and eventually killed by someone here in the area, and it's been a long-standing unsolved crime. It's been a cold case for a very long time. Um, the awesome part of this is, if you can take this out, is that there are humans out there seeking closure for families of such a tragedy using science and ongoing and developing technology. And they recently put out a article, or a news brief, saying that they have now used that science to get closer to narrowing down suspects, because forensic science is developing in this way. And the interesting part and the inspiring part to me was that there are people out there who are dedicating their entire livelihoods to closure for families like the Mahalovic family. And that to me is just an extraordinary effort, because I have to tell you, I can only imagine how tedious and how frustrating and how heart-wrenching all that work is. And, that's 1989. It's a very long time ago. That case has been cold for a really long time, unfortunately. And if they can bring any type of closure to families like that using science and using technology and continuing to develop those things, I think it's all the better. I think it makes us all safer. And I think it's, it's good work. It's cool work. So hopefully they can close that up for that family as best they can.
Yeah, that's heart wrenching.
So, not to bring the mood down or anything, but I know you're working on the Dyson thing. Do we have any other sponsors?
Well, we may soon. Actually, I had someone reach out. I'm gonna hold on announcing it until it's official. But that could be something that comes along. I think that we could play the sponsor clip just to see if anything comes in.
All right, roll it. All right, there we go. Thank you very much. This is exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah.
You're filling me with hope.
I was thinking that maybe miraculously somebody would have just chimed in with a sponsorship, but it appears that didn't happen.
You and I are the only two on this recording, but maybe somebody just got in there.
You never know.
So, Tim, can you kind of give us a little backstory on who our guest is to you, and intro her for us?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah. Alyssa Syms is joining us today, which is awesome. She's just a really dynamic and talented young woman who has a really unique history, and especially of recent, in terms of some transitions and work that she's experienced. And I'm really excited to have her on board to talk a little bit more about what she's been through and, how she's helping to make her own contributions to the world. So let's bring her in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with the one and only Alyssa Syms. Alyssa, welcome to our, I've used the word illustrious in the past. I don't know if I can use that again, prestigious podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually the first word that came to mind. Prestigious.
Off to a great start.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Thank you for having me, though. I'm very excited to be here.
Wow. Wow. You made me blush, Alyssa. I'm so excited that we have you and that you feel that way about our podcast. So, Alyssa, it's awesome to have you here. You're an awesome person, and we're really excited to learn from you and just hear a little bit more about your career, right? And what career means to you and how it has shaped you and how you have shaped it over the years. So the really exciting thing about you, and I think you may be the first one, you recently changed jobs within
I did.
the past 6 months, I think, right?
Yeah, I actually this is week 6, I think, at my
Oh
new job.
wow.
So very new.
Wow. That's awesome. So can you share
Yes.
with us a little bit, can you share a little bit more about what you're currently doing?
Sure. So I'm a social worker. That's more of like a blanket way to describe my job. I've had several different jobs throughout social work. That was kind of the reason why I chose to go into social work, is because there are so many different avenues to practice. So most recently, I've been in a school setting for the last probably 3 years. And I just changed to, I'm working at a hospital now. I work at Georgetown University Hospital, and I've been there for about 6 weeks. And that's been quite a learning curve for me because I've never done medical social work before.
Mm.
I've never worked in like any sort of a healthcare setting. So being in this role now has been very different in terms of my day-to-day responsibilities, who I'm interacting with. Prior to working at the school, I was working in child welfare. So I was doing like child protection services for about 7 years. I was a CPS worker. So I would be the person that would come and knock on the door and kind of investigate reports. And then I went into working in an elementary school. So now I'm predominantly working with adults, which is much different than what I've been doing. But so far, honestly, it's been, like I said, it's very different, but I like it. The coworkers I have are great. The population that I'm working with is great. I will say though, working in healthcare is eye-opening because you really are seeing people at their sickest,
Mm.
which can be jarring when you're not used to seeing that every day. So a majority of the people that I'm meeting with are in hospital beds or they're going through some sort of health crisis. So that has been like my first week. I was asking people, I'm like, is everyone okay? Like how are you all like doing this every day? So in that
Mm.
sense, I think it's taking a toll on me a little bit is just seeing people in these conditions, and seeing families deal with, their loved ones being in these situations. But at the same time, I think it's brought a lot of fulfillment in terms of, helping people, but in a different setting.
Hmm. So I have a question. In terms of the social work that you do, obviously you just listed three very heavy, extreme. You're not necessarily seeing people at their best, regardless of anything in those trajectories, right? Be it CPS, obviously, that's never a good scenario. Obviously, if a child needs social work in a school, probably has its own stress. And then, like you just talked about in healthcare, how do you, first of all, can you talk to us about those transitions? Because that's kind of something we focus a lot on in this podcast is like those career transitions. What prompted those? How have you seen those through? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So leaving child welfare was difficult for me because, to be honest, CPS, it sounds really bad, but I really loved the work. I really loved meeting different families, meeting different kids, and really being able to, in some situations, nothing was going on. You close your investigation and you move on. But there were also a lot of families that I came across that I was able to link them with services or get them into therapy or kind of do something to help address whatever issue, was going on in the family. But eventually I became very burned out from that,
Mm.
because also you're very transient in the community. So you're going to houses, you're going to hospitals, you're meeting people where they're at, which can become very taxing, especially once I moved to DC. Also, what I was seeing was a lot of the drugs and the crime and the things that were happening were like, they were really happening. Like in Buffalo, it was like you would get a report and sometimes it would be like, oh, like someone's mad at someone or like someone misinterpreted a situation. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you do your investigation, you close your case and you move on.
Mm-hmm.
But it did seem like when I got here, the poverty level was so much higher. And what a lot of the families were dealing with was so much more complex, than what I was used to. And also the expectations put on you from the administration, like the supervisors and the commissioners and, everything. You're under a very fine scope. when you're in that position. So I think everything just started to get to me. And I just really felt like it was time for me to move on to something for my own mental health, to be honest. It was just becoming too overwhelming for me.
Sure.
But I really liked working with the kids. So that's kind of how I transitioned into the school. Was I really enjoyed working with the kids, and I think it gave me a unique ability to understand. So I was a therapist. So I did groups, and I would do like one-on-one therapy with kids. And I think that having the background in their home life was helpful, to deliver therapy to them or interventions that I felt like would be helpful, because I had a better perspective of maybe what they were dealing with at home that was impacting them at school. Because that's typically how you end up getting kids, is because behaviorally or academically they're not, performing in a way that the school felt was to their level. So that's typically how I would get the kids. So oftentimes you're dealing with things at home that are manifesting at school. So I think that was a really smooth transition in that sense. And I also was used to dealing with families. So that was easy. And to be honest, leaving the schools was difficult for me. The only reason really why I left the school was because the agency that I was working for was doing very bad business. It was I loved my team. I loved my supervisors. But there were certain things that they were doing that ethically I was not in alignment with. So that was really why I ended up looking for another job. And then honestly, like, Georgetown kind of fell in my lap. I didn't even actually apply for that job. I applied for a different job, and then she ended up sending my resume over, and things just happened. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And I like it on this side because in CPS, you have a lot of, it's a lot of stress going home. Like you wonder if you made the right decision. You wonder if you did enough. Is this child, like, we're dealing with child safety. So it's a much different thing than like a discharge plan from a hospital. If things don't go according to plan, they'll be safe for a night. We can figure it out and we'll deal with it tomorrow. So I think also some of that was weighing on me also, was just going home and still thinking about work, like, at home.
Sure. I don't know how you avoid it, to be honest with you. I think it takes a special kind of person to do what you do anyway, but, not taking it home, I have no idea how you do that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was very insightful in terms of how you transition. And
can you, you mentioned something really quickly. You applied for a job at the hospital and were referred to another position. I think I heard you correctly when you said that, right?
Yes.
So when you were applying for jobs, because we anticipate that we have some listeners who may be in a similar position, right? They're thinking about exploring something new. They're trying something new. Was that just luck, or like, what did you do to strengthen yourself through that process and make yourself more marketable?
So at the time that I was looking for a job, it is not a lie when they say looking for a job is a full-time job, because there was a point when I was, and I'm not exaggerating when I would say that I would do 4 interviews in a week, and this went on for like 3 weeks. So these were like initial interviews, follow-up interviews, things like that. So I was just kind of like applying, I don't want to say everywhere, because I was mindful and, like, the job descriptions and things like that. So at the hospital, I had applied for this job and I didn't have the experience. They wanted 2 years of hospital experience. And they were very dead set on that. So I ended up talking to a recruiter, which I've never done before, which I would, especially when you're in like the social service field, we operate differently than the corporate world, which I think is a big thing that people maybe don't know, is that we, like, if you work in PR, if you work in advertising, you go to like a headhunter, you go to a recruiter, and they link you and things like that. And I had never really worked with anything like that before, but I worked for MedStar, which is a very large healthcare chain here in DC. So when I applied for the job, the recruiter called me and she's like, they're very dead set on these qualifications that you do not have, but I do have an opening in a different department that you meet the qualifications for. Like, do you want me to send your resume over? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, why not? And so that's just kind of how it happened. I ended up having like a FaceTime or like a Zoom call with the manager, the clinical manager. We hit it off. She sent me to someone else. And then I ended up in this role. So I don't think that happens a lot in our field, but I do think when you're dealing with like large chains, like if you're dealing with a healthcare that has 20 hospitals, if you're dealing with a behavioral health clinic that has several different, and when you're dealing with larger companies, I definitely would encourage, because this is the first time that I had ever really done something like that. I would encourage, if you're in the social work field or some psychology or anything similar, to explore other openings, that even if you don't hit every single qualification, or even if it's not exactly what you think, just apply anyway, and you just really never know like where your resume could end up.
And all those interviews that you were getting, were those all through the recruiter, or was that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, these were all, I would just honestly like be on Indeed and just be like going through stuff, and then I knew of certain places, so I would look. Yeah, so it wasn't all through the recruiter, but just, I mean, it came down to like 2 different jobs, and Georgetown was definitely my first choice. So I'm glad it worked out the way it did. But even through that process, I learned so much just about what I really wanted to do, and because at the stage in my career, I've been in the field for maybe like 15 years. So I wanted to be a little bit more picky, I guess, about what I was willing to do, but also like making that transition in my mind. Like, you're not a new social worker anymore. Like, you don't have to take like whatever people are willing to give to you.
Sure.
And that's another thing. If you've been in the field for a little bit, is having that confidence to like ask for what you want and like go for what you want, even though it's like you've never done it before.
Sure.
I want to follow up on part of that question as well, in terms of just like I've known you for probably your whole life.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
I was gonna
most
say,
likely. So, and I'm just gonna say it real quick, just so everybody's clear. Like, you're a super intelligent, talented, amazing human being, right? Like, you would
Thank
be
you.
an asset to any organization. When you think of yourself in terms of like marketing yourself or branding yourself, I'm not good at this. Do you think, in terms of when you think about social media and using that as a tool for branding yourself or marketing yourself and getting yourself, more visible to these organizations, do you use it? Do you stay away from it? What's your sort of take on that if you were to offer advice to people who are questioning whether or not that's a good mechanism to use as part of your job search?
So me personally, I really keep professional Alyssa and like social media Alyssa like very separate. I've struggled a little bit with like having a personality that's like not your job, and not how do you kind of like you said, like market yourself and like give yourself opportunities, but also I also find social media as a place to like be myself and not, I guess, be accessible to like everybody professionally that knows me. So personally, I really don't mix the two. Like even my coworkers, like they'll be like, "What's your Instagram?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
What's Instagram? Right.
Like, I don't know if you want to see me on the weekends cheering on the Bills in the Boils bar. Like, I'm not sure if that's really something like a boundary we want to cross. But I have seen I have a friend that I went to grad school with that opened up his own practice. And he uses social media as a way to, post things and get foot traction and, be relatable. I think I see the value in it. Depending on like what you're trying to do. But I also have used my social media platforms. I've done my own independent like charity things. So I did like a blanket drive and a cold weather like gear drive. So I collected hats and blankets and all that. And I used my social media and it was great. And people, I found, like buy into certain things that you believe in if they know you. So I think that depending on what you're trying to do, you just have to understand like what it is you're trying to do, how you want to go about it, and what boundaries you're willing to, depending on what you use social media for. Some people only have social media for their business. Me personally, I just use social media in more of a personal way. So I tend to really not professionally like intertwine the two.
Yeah. So Alyssa, when you look back on, your life and kind of think about how you've grown as a professional, is there any moment that stands out to you, or any especially maybe when you were younger, something that you learned as a young person working that you kind of reflect on today?
I think I kind of was always in the customer service field. Like my very early jobs, I'm very proud of. I was a Dairy Queen employee for like 7 years. I was a manager. Okay. I worked at Wegmans, and like the front end, like cashier for like 6 years when I was in college. So a lot of my jobs, even prior to getting into social work, were really just interacting with people and the public and using your personality. And I mean, even after I quit Wegmans, I would go in and people would remember. They'd be like, "Oh, like you used to work here," and like so. I think that I realized at a very young age that I had an ability to like forge relationships with people, and to relate to people, because I really built relationships like in both of those settings, which is kind of like weird, but also like you get regular customers, and so you end up just building relationships with people. And I have always had a genuine interest in people and a genuine care for people, which I think, Travis, you mentioned earlier, like to even do your job, you have to genuinely care about people and you have to genuinely want to do what you can for another person. And not everybody is like that. And that's okay. That's why there's different jobs, different strokes for different folk. But I think for me at a very young age, I just learned like I just really liked people and I liked meeting people and I liked talking to people, and it was always very seamless for me. So, when my parents are social workers, so that was kind of how I got exposure to social work. And then once I had some of these very early jobs, I was like, okay, like I think this is like for me. I think like I never really saw myself doing anything else, to be honest with you. Like I went to like my major in undergrad was social work. Like I went in like from the beginning, I was like, this is it. Cause I'm like, I can't imagine like I talked to some of my friends and like, this is no shade to anybody else, but like I listen to them sometimes. I'm like, that's so boring. You mean you just like figure some stuff out on paper and like some numbers, or like, I don't know. To me, that was just like, I'm like, boo, like boring. Like, so I just have always liked like the nitty gritty and just like getting into it with people and like, let's figure it out. And I just realized that like at a very young age.
Nice. And for those not on the East Coast, Wegmans is a grocery store. Yes?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
The most elite grocery store, if we're being honest.
Okay.
But
all right. She's
that's
still
just
got pride in it. Cool.
It's a great grocery store. It's a great grocery store. Alyssa, when you look back at your teenage self, what words of wisdom would you offer to your teenage self?
Just go for it. Like, honestly, I think like I'm kind of living my wildest dreams right now a little bit. And so I think like one of the things that I came from a small town. I mean, Buffalo, people could argue it's like not a small town, but like to me it is. It's a small, big city, I guess you could say. But I kind of like always like knew like I wanted out and I wanted like more, or like I wanted to explore like what was out of my hometown. But I think where I'm from, it was just like, you kind of like get a job and you just kind of like do your thing. And like, that's fine. You know what I mean? But for me, I just kind of always had like a bigger vision for myself. And I think I would have went for it earlier if I would have had a little bit more faith, or if I would have known like it was going to work out. So like me wanting to move to DC, that was really just me on a whim being like, I just want to live in DC. And so I just like found a job and like moved, and like now I'm on my 4th year here. So I think that's really what I wish I would have been, what I would have told myself is like, just do it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you have 2 parents who are also social workers, yes?
Yes.
So are they like, do you talk shop with them, quote unquote? Like, do you see them as a support system professionally in that way? Even if you're not in the same networks, obviously, but like, and they're in a different phase, but do you kind of level with them professionally now that you've been at this for 15 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that I would have made it this far because, to be honest, like I said, social work is such a niche thing. Like, it's hard for me. First of all, I don't really want to talk about it when I get home. Like, you don't want to rehash like everything that just happened all day, but also like, because also at the end of the day, you are dealing with people. You're dealing with personalities. You're dealing with, it can be overwhelming at times, and especially CPS. Both my parents worked in CPS. So I think just like people that just genuinely know like what you're dealing with and like what you're going through and like what you want to do. The whole reason why I even went back and got my master's in social work is because my dad told me to. He's like, if you don't, like, this is kind of what your trajectory is going to be. But if you do, then you can go this way. And I'm like, all right, well, I want to go this way. Mm-hmm. So I think their experience, it really makes all the difference.
That's great. That's great that you had that example too.
That is great. And they've been a huge balance for you as you've grown in your career. What else have you found to be helpful in terms of kind of maintaining that work-life balance?
I mean, I'm really good. I'm a decent work-life balancer. Like, I do a good job. Over the years, I've gotten really good at like figuring out like what I need to do when I get home to like and because also social work, you have to be careful because you can overdo it, and you can put too much of yourself like into it. And I think as a very young social worker, that's what I would do, is like I would like pine over things, and I would like, you're dealing with such real things, I guess, that I just really would like, I felt like I took it on. I felt like sometimes like the weight of the world would like be on my shoulders, and I'm like, girl, like this actually isn't your, like this is not your life. Like you're helping people navigate their lives, but like please keep in mind like this is separate from you. So I think over the years, I've done a really good job on like making sure that I don't take stuff home, and I, know what I need to do if I'm in a mood or if something's got to me. I have really great friends, a great family, so I really like lean into them. But I think I've just really, I spent a lot of time being stressed out. I'll say that. I spent a lot of time being stressed out, and I learned like how, like if I'm not my best self, I can't help other people. And my boss, especially where I work now, she's really great. She's like, don't eat lunch at your desk. Like take a walk around the campus, like get out of the building. Just trying to reinforce some of those good habits, because it can become consuming if you're not careful. But I do my fair share of relaxation also.
Good.
It's important. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, we know you're. Yeah, I mean, I can't even begin to fathom what you've experienced, and especially as a young person, working with some of the most needy families and kids, and just the trauma that those people have experienced. Your heart breaks for them. So, we just commend you for your ongoing effort and commitment to the work. It's really, really
Thank
inspiring.
you.
We ask all of our guests this impact question. And if you
Yes.
need to take a minute to think about it, that's totally fine. But can you name one experience or person that has had a profound impact on the person you are today?
First and foremost, obviously my parents. Like I'm not going to get back into them again because I already spoke about them earlier, but I think that they've made a lot of things possible for me, and I'm very grateful. Like they've made a nice foundation so that I am able to explore these different things in my life. And I don't have the overhead that some people do. So I will say that the reason why I think I'm able to move here and live the life I want to live is because of that. But I will add that I also had a professor. Her name was Anna Ball. And so before I went to grad school, I like got my feet wet, and my parents were like, why don't you take a course or two, like see if you like it. And then if you want to pursue it, go for it. I'm like, great. So I did that, and I met a professor my very first semester. And she actually was teaching a school social work class. And at the end of the semester, well, we hit it off all semester. She just was like very down to earth. I could talk to her about things. She was just very relatable to me, which is, I find challenging in this field sometimes, is finding relatable coworkers, or relatable colleagues. And she was one that was like young, but still had a lot of passion for the work. So I think our conversations, especially at that time, were very impactful to me. And then when I had applied for the fall before the spring was over. I think I had her in the spring semester. So I already knew I had gotten into grad school for the fall. And she was just very reaffirming and was just like, you're made for this. Like, this is what you're here to do. Like, don't question it. Like, I've seen your work all semester, and like, just go in like head first and don't even worry. Like, you're going to nail it and everything's going to be great. And then she gave me some resources and things like that. And we've seen each other over the years and kind of kept in touch here and there over the years. But I think hearing that from her, because I was kind of entering the point in my career, well, I'm like going to grad school, and I'm like thinking about the next step, and I'm like really not sure. And so she, I think, really was helpful in guiding me to the point of like, yes, I do want to go to grad school, and like, this is really what you're good at, and like, you should really go for it. And so to hear that from somebody that wasn't a parent or a friend or someone like that, to hear that from a professor, and to have built that relationship with her, to this day, like, even if I'm like, am I doing a good job? Like, I don't know. Like, I think about that conversation, or I think about the relationships and conversations we had. And she comes to mind often. So I would say her.
That's great. We've actually found quite a few consistencies throughout quite a few of our guests and people we've spoken to offline, where it's like, if it's not your parents who you mentioned, it's also an educator of some kind. And so that doesn't shock me at all, but it's amazing that there are people out there doing that kind of work to help, you know, as a foundation for other people to, like you, to continue to help others. It's, you know, it's kind of the ultimate pay it forward, which is really cool.
Absolutely. Especially in our field. Like I said, it can be challenging. I'm
That's
grateful
great.
for her, and I'm grateful for, you know, the time that we were able to have together.
Alyssa, I love the story that you shared about this professor, and I love how, you know, people like this can come in and out of our lives and you know, potentially not even know the significant impact that they're having at the time, and how that, you know, shapes our futures. And we've heard that theme too, and I just want to, you know, re-articulate that, because it is so significant, and it really calls all of us, I think, to continue to just be good to one another, you know, and support one another. It's so awesome. I just think you're such an awesome person. And it's just really, really, I'm so hopeful for the people that you're serving in DC, and, you know, they're probably receiving incredible care from you and your team. And that's a really wonderful thing, because as you mentioned earlier in this conversation, they're coming to you, you're finding them at a time when they are potentially at their most vulnerable moments. And that's a really hard place to be. Nobody likes being in a hospital. So, nor do family members of those people. So I just, you know, we wish you obviously ongoing strength and dedication to your work, because you're really doing a great thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, you know, inviting me, and also just talking about this, because I do feel like sometimes our work, like, because people are always like, what's social work? And I'm like, we're who take care of everything else. Like, we take care of the rest of the world. And so I just really appreciate you even kind of like highlighting and like spotlighting, you know, what we do, and, you know, how we've kind of gone about our careers. I think sometimes, I don't want to say a forgotten profession, but it feels like that sometimes. So I do appreciate you guys even just having me on here to chat.
Well, we see you for sure, and we appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is awesome.
All right.
So cool.
All right. Well, there you have it. Alyssa Syms, thank you again. Great interview, really interesting insights, and a special kind of person that we feel honored to have on the podcast. So thank you very much. Tim, I have to ask you, because I'm always genuinely curious, how are things with the dog?
We're doing okay. The other night, sadly, she got very sick in the middle of the night.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was very surprised. She usually sleeps through the night, but about 2:30, I heard her whining, so I got up and I let her outside. Okay, I'm just sharing a quick story here, and then went back to bed. She came inside. At about 3:30, I heard her whining again. So I walked over to her area, and she just stood there. It was dark, right? 3:30 in the morning. And I, you know, offered her to go outside. She didn't go outside, so went back to bed. Woke up at 6, walked into the area where she spends her evenings, and there was everything everywhere. And I felt terrible for her. So, you know, I think you'll point this out again as another sign of me expressing compassion for my dog, which I think you'll appreciate.
You care about her.
I do. I felt really bad for her, you know, so that was unfortunate. But, you know, we're getting by here, Abby and I, and
she's okay though, right? Like, she's fine.
Yeah, she's fine.
Just like
Yeah, she was. I took her for a walk this morning, and she was pulling me like with full of energy.
Oh, okay.
So I think she just had something that upset her stomach. But I do feel bad for her. Let me say one other quick thing. I work from home the majority of the week, and sometimes around like 2:00, right? It'll all of a sudden be 2:00 or so, and I'll go, oh my gosh, I haven't even brushed my teeth yet. Like, you know, sometimes you just get so engrossed in the work, which is just the way things go.
Sure.
And so I find that around 2:00, it's a really nice time just to get outside for a minute and take a walk. I don't know, you know, take a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk, just kind of reset, get some fresh air. I don't necessarily know if I would do that if I didn't have Abby.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like a good excuse to get outside, for sure.
It's a good excuse to get outside. So, you know, I have to acknowledge that and express my gratitude to her for that.
All right, so folks, we're on episode 108. We're 8 episodes in, and we have finally gotten Tim to fully turn the corner. Because you just said 2 things that were really dog owner alike. Like, you were a proud dog owner there for like a solid 3 minutes. Own it. Don't give me that face. Own it. He's so
No
mad
comment.
at me right now.
No
Fair
comment.
enough.
Well, good job, Trav. You win. You win this week. So listen, great chatting with you, man. Great to connect. And thank you again, Alyssa, for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Alyssa. Great episode. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
Tim and Travis on the mic, talking life and what's it like. Middle age, it's quite the ride. Finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind. Funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle age. Middle-age mayhem, breaking free, finding out who we can be, laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan, older, wiser, still we stand, navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Free, finding out who we can be, laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan, older, wiser, still we stand, navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Middle age, enjoying the fun, middle age has just begun. Tim and Travis lead the way, every episode will slay.
Tough. You can't say dialoguing. It's not like, no one says that.
Well, I'm not going to say it ever again. Alyssa's a good talker.
Cool.
Sure, go for it. She's going to make us look terrible, which is great.
It's charity. Anything with the 2 of us is charity. It's totally fine.
Don't put that in the outtakes.
Wow. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm kind of proud of myself for that, because I'm not as smart as Tim.
I think it may be a mistake for us to record these sessions so late at night, because seeing Trav's face as the last person that I see most evenings is not good for me.